Developer Dontnod has released their brand new cerebral action-adventure game called Remember Me. The game features an interesting concept where people can get rid of or even alter bad memories using a technological implant called a Sensen. Man, I really wish I had that power. I'd love to delete that hornet's nest from my memory of my 9th birthday party. Anyway, as you can imagine, this technology gets abused by large corporations and the player sets out on a quest to take down those responsible. But will Remember Me be an experience you'll never forget, or will you want to send it to your brain's delete bin immediately? Let's find out. Players take control of a memory hunter named Nilin, who, not surprisingly considering the game's theme, has amnesia. She's helped by a mysterious ally known as Edge, who explains to her why her memory has been wiped and helps her take down those responsible. The first thing you're probably going to notice about Remember Me is that it's beautiful. The city of New Paris is incredibly detailed and stylized. It attempts to overload your senses by constantly flashing messages and signs at you. It's even got advertisement droids. It's as if the city is a living, breathing computer program that's constantly running in tutorial mode. And it's a beautiful backdrop for the many fight scenes you'll be bashing your way through. So let's talk about the fighting. The combat is similar to games like Arkham Asylum, where you can attack and then dodge away from enemies when an icon appears over their heads. You've probably seen it before. But Remember Me also introduces a feature called the Combo Lab, which allows you to create combos using things called press-ins. A press-in is basically one button press in your combo. So, some press-ins give you a health bonus, while other press-ins do extra damage, etc. You can customize what a specific button in the combo will do, but you can't customize the length of the combo or which order the buttons are pressed in. And there are only 4 total combos to choose from. So what you're left with is a mechanic that's a cool idea, but a bit lacking in depth. After the first couple hours of play, you'll discover that you really only need 2 combos, one to refill your health and one to reset your cooldowns. Then you just spam those over and over again. Why do you need to reset your cooldowns? Because you have these things called S-press-ins, which are basically super moves. You can plant a bomb on an enemy or turn invisible for an instant takedown. And while some may look cool, they get old fast, because every combat scenario boils down to use a super move, hit people till you get enough focus and cooldown to use another super move, then use another super move. You don't even really get to figure out which super moves are useful against which enemies, because the game will straight up tell you, hey, this guy is weak to this thing. You also have a weapon called a spammer, but it's just kind of a boring standard ranged attack that's only useful against robots, so it doesn't do much to change up the flow of combat. So what is there to break up the fairly monotonous combat? Well, there's climbing portions, but they're ridiculously easy for the most part. I mean, there are a couple traps here and there, but nothing that challenging. The climbing scenes mostly serve as another way for you to admire the well-crafted world the developers have created. There's also a few puzzles scattered throughout the game, but none that will take you more than a minute to figure out. Most of them will take you less than that. Remember Me features the ability to remix certain people's memories. So what you do is you watch their memory and then kind of rewind back through it, and there's certain things in the memory that you could click on to change how the memory turns out, and then they'll remember it differently. It's kind of a cool gimmick the first time you do it, but it doesn't really add that much to the game. It's just kind of an interactive cutscene. Let's talk about the story. It's an interesting premise, but I can't help but feel like it's a bit rushed. There's a lot they don't explain. For example, there are these things called leapers, which are basically mutants that feed on people's memories, but the game never explains how consuming memories can actually alter their physical appearance and give them the power to turn invisible. As far as characters go, you really only get to know Nilin. Every other character plays a very minor role in the game, with the possible exception of Edge, who has a lot of dialogue, but not really a lot of on-screen time. The voice acting in the game varies. Nilin is excellently voiced, but many of the other characters feel flat by comparison. And the dialogue is pretty forgettable for the most part, which is ironic considering the game's name. Remember Me is also an extremely linear experience, which was disappointing because New Paris is definitely the type of place that I'd love to go get lost and do some exploring in. There's one part where you wander into a robot whorehouse and it makes you go, oh man, I wonder what other weird awesome stuff is scattered around the city, but sadly the player will never get to find out. The music in the game is fairly enjoyable. I felt like it helped get me pumped up for the next fight, even though I knew that it was probably going to be like all the other fights. And the sound effects of the fight integrated well with the music and made for a very dynamic experience. Alright, let's go over the pros and cons. On the pro side, we've got a beautiful game world, a unique premise, and a pretty decent soundtrack. On the con side, the combat isn't very deep, the story feels rushed, and the game is just overall not that challenging. The game does have a certain appeal to it. If you want to just shut off your brain and enjoy some mindless combat in an incredible world, then you might enjoy it. but I do feel like the developers overreached a bit and wound up with a repetitive and somewhat shallow game. Final score is 7 robot prostitutes out of 10. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.